it's very complicated too by the kind of social media chaos and influencer culture of it all. And one thing that I almost hesitate to ask you about is because I find that it causes so much confusion, is what would you say to, liberal white yoga people who, for instance, are sharing media from somebody like Candace Owens as though she has a reasonable point of view, or as though they're expressing, equanimity or something like that by giving both sides of something. Can you offer any guidance there?
To be honest, when I first heard of Candace Owens and what the messages she was perpetuating on social media, I went and looked at her page and was heartbroken and also just confused. I was really curious about how someone who embodies an identity that is marginalized would be saying things like she does. And I can see why some white folks would sort of grab onto those messages, especially from a BIPOC person, because there's like validation then in what white folks believe. And I know that we talked some about this question before. What I'm curious about for her and people who are marginalized expressing messages like she is, that are divisive, that are misguided, that are false. I'm always curious about what led to that, like what led her to become this way and to be saying things that are just not true, and to be, I think participating in the dehumanization of folks by denying, like, for example, COVID's real, and there's a denial about that and a denial about us wearing masks and how that can reduce the risk of contracting COVID. Right. It's harmful to perpetuate a message like that when 500,000 people have died in the US, and I don't know how many people have died globally, millions, right? So I would say the simple thing is to stop following her, but there's another Candace Owens or another person like her. I would interrogate what she's saying, though, and interrogate myself if I believed what she was saying around what is going on for me that I would even attach to the messaging that she's offering. Right. Because it's so deeply harmful and toxic. That's how I feel about her messaging.
Now, related to the complications of the online world, which of course have escalated over the past year in our current state of lockdown, I've heard you speak at length about the embodied experience of being Black in America, being othered, moving within the landscape of white supremacy. And you describe this in really careful detail in your book and in Skill in Action. How does all of the online conflict and discourse around racism intersect and not with this embodied experience? And I'm asking here because the online world is an access point, and it's often a very volatile one to the discussion for many white liberals. And yet, like everything that unfolds online, it's it can be a very distorted lens.
Yes, it can be very distorted. I feel like there's, social media can certainly build movements, as we have witnessed and are experiencing, and social media and sort of online is not necessarily relational. And part of what I have witnessed is that a lot of people are talking about cancel culture, canceling people, right? Or demeaning people because social media allows me to say what I want and then to not interact in a deep way, which I think when we're relational, it is from a place of embodiment, right? It is from a place and point of connection. And I think in my experience, I have to work at that on social media.
You have to work on that?
I have to work at that. I have to be like, this is my story. I'm connecting with people versus I'm going to post this thing and I don't care who I connect with and I don't care about the impact of this. I'm thoughtful about it. It's not because I'm reaching people, right? And I'm in connection with them. And so I think, the culture at large, I feel like does so many things to distract us from our embodied experience. And because it does these things that are very divisive, that disconnect us, I think that lends itself to people then causing harm towards one another. Because if I'm not embodied, I'm just going to harm someone else, right? Or myself, or both. And I think that's reflected in the online world. I think it's more intense there because I'm not looking at the person I'm talking to, right? I'm just like posting something. So that's why I said I have to work at relationship in that way online. Although it's not challenging for me to remember I'm embodied, because as you named, the culture reminds me of that all the time based on race. But I think it's like social media can feel transactional, and it can feel transformative as